In the spring of 1220, the Mongol armies swept through the Khwarezmian Empire with unprecedented force. Cities like Bukhara and Samarkand, among the wealthiest in the world, fell within months. Contemporary Persian chroniclers documented devastation so extreme that, as one wrote, the region would not recover even in 1,000 years. But there's another story, one written not in chronicles but in DNA itself. In 2003, geneticists discovered something extraordinary. A Y-chromosomal lineage present in approximately 8% of men across a vast region of Asia, stretching from the Pacific to the Caspian Sea. The researchers initially proposed this genetic signature originated with Genghis Khan and his male relatives about 1,000 years ago. If true, it would mean roughly 16 million men today, about 0.5% of the world's male population, carry this genetic marker. That's an extraordinary concentration of descendants from a single lineage, unprecedented in human history. But in 2017, a Chinese research team analyzing over 18,000 individuals challenged this conclusion. They found this genetic signature actually predates Genghis Khan by over 1,600 years. So what really happened? How did one man's empire leave such a profound mark, both in history and potentially in human genetics? Today, let's examine what we actually know about the Mongol conquests, separating documented history from legend, and explore what modern science can and cannot tell us about Genghis Khan's genetic legacy. This is the story of an empire written in blood, steel, and possibly DNA. Our story begins not with a conqueror, but with a boy fighting for survival. Born somewhere between 1155 and 1167 in the harsh steppes of Mongolia, he was given the name Temujin. According to the secret history of the Mongols, the oldest surviving Mongolian text, written sometime after his death, Temujin's early life was marked by hardship that would forge his character. When Temujin was only 8 or 9 years old, his father Yesuje, a minor chieftain, was poisoned by tribal rivals. His mother Holan and her children were immediately abandoned by their tribe. Reduced to near poverty, they survived on roots, fish, and whatever the harsh landscape would provide. The young Temujin learned a brutal lesson. In the world of the Mongolian steppes, strength meant survival and weakness meant death. Around age 16 or 17, Temujin married Bort, a young woman who had been betrothed to him since childhood. Her family gave them a black sable coat as a wedding gift, a luxury that would soon prove pivotal. But their marriage was short-lived. Shortly after their wedding, the Merkit tribe raided Temujin's camp. The raid was revenge. Years earlier, Temujin's father had kidnapped Temujin's mother from the Merkits, and they had waited nearly 2 decades to retaliate. Temujin escaped, but Bort was captured. According to the secret history, Temujin was devastated. His bed was made empty, his breast torn apart. For months, he didn't know if Bort was alive or dead, violated or murdered. This is where Temujin's strategic brilliance first emerged. He took that black sable coat and used it to form a crucial alliance. He gave it to Togrul, a powerful Khan who had been his father's sworn brother, effectively adopting Temujin as a son. With Togrul's forces and the help of his childhood friend Jamukha, Temujin launched a rescue mission. 8 months after her capture, they found Bort among fleeing Merkit refugees. The reunion was dramatic. As the pillaging went on around them, Temujin rode through the chaos calling her name. When Bort heard his voice, she ran toward him. Even in the darkness, they recognized each other and fell into each other's arms. But there was a complication. Bort was pregnant. Whose child she carried, Temujin's or her captors', no one could know for certain. When she gave birth to a son named Jachai, whispers about his paternity would follow him throughout his life. Yet Temujin accepted him as his legitimate son. Something crystallized in Temujin during this ordeal. He had learned that in this brutal world, women were not just victims of war, they were strategic assets. Control over families, over lineages, Over-reproduction itself was a form of power that could outlast any battlefield victory. Over the next 2 decades, Temujin systematically built his power base. He was charismatic, brilliant at forming alliances, and ruthlessly effective at eliminating rivals. By 1206, when the Mongol tribes proclaimed him Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler, he had unified the fractious steppe peoples into a disciplined military machine. But he wasn't content with controlling just the steppes. He had a vision that would reshape Asia. Initially, Genghis Khan sought peaceful trade relations with his western neighbors. Around 1218, he sent a large merchant caravan to the Y-chromosomal Empire, a vast Turkic Islamic state that controlled much of Central Asia. According to Persian historian Minhaj-i-Suraj, Genghis Khan sent the Y-chromosomal ruler Muhammad II a message of peace, greeting him as his neighbor. "I am master of the lands of the rising sun, while you rule those of the setting sun." But when the caravan reached the border city of Otrar, disaster struck. The governor, a man named Inalchuk, accused the merchants of being spies. He seized their goods and executed them all, both Mongol and Muslim merchants alike. Genghis Khan sent 3 ambassadors to Shah Muhammad demanding justice. The Shah's response was catastrophic. He had 2 of the Mongol ambassadors shaved and the Muslim envoy beheaded. For Genghis Khan, who considered ambassadors sacred and inviolable, this was an unforgivable insult. In 1219, he mobilized his forces, estimated between 90,000 and 200,000 men, and crossed into the Y-chromosomal Empire. What followed was not merely warfare. It was systematic devastation on an industrial scale. The Mongol army wasn't just cavalry raiders. They had evolved into a sophisticated military organization with engineers, siege specialists, and intelligence networks. Before major battles, spies infiltrated cities to gather detailed information. Their forces were organized into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 men, allowing for flexible, coordinated operations across vast distances. They also engaged in psychological warfare. Genghis Khan spread rumors, forged letters, and exploited existing divisions within the Y-chromosomal leadership, particularly between Shah Muhammad and his powerful mother, Turkin Khatan. The cities fell one after another. Bukhara fell in February 1220. Genghis Khan crossed the supposedly impassable Kizilkum Desert to attack the city by surprise. When the garrison attempted to flee, they were massacred in open combat. The city surrendered, and while the inhabitants were spared initially, the city was systematically looted. Samarkand, the Y-chromosomal capital, fell in March 1220. The city had stronger fortifications and a larger garrison. Persian sources claim anywhere from 50,000 to 110,000 defenders, though modern historians estimate the real number was closer to 10,000. On the 3rd day of fighting, the Mongols feigned retreat, drawing half the garrison outside the walls where they were slaughtered. The city surrendered 5 days later. Otrar, where the original insult had occurred, was besieged for 5 months before falling in early 1220. According to legend, the governor Inalchuk had molten silver poured into his eyes and ears. Though historians note the Mongols rarely used such elaborate executions and probably wouldn't have wasted the silver. But the worst devastation came in the region of Khorasan. After securing Transoxiana, Genghis Khan sent his youngest son Taluy south with approximately 7,000 men to subjugate Khorasan, a wealthy region containing some of the world's largest cities, Merv, Nishapur, and Herat. Persian chronicler Atamalik Juvini, himself a native of Khorasan, later wrote that his homeland had been so devastated it would never fully recover. His testimony carries particular weight because he witnessed the aftermath firsthand. At Nishapur in 1221, the city resisted for 8 days before falling. What happened next became legend. According to Juvini, The city was raised in revenge for the death of Genghis Khan's son-in-law Takwachar, who had been killed during an earlier rebellion. Juvini claims 1,747,000 people were killed, a number modern historians recognize as impossible, but which reflects the psychological trauma of the survivors who found their losses difficult to quantify. Archaeological evidence confirms widespread destruction. The Metropolitan Museum of Art's excavations in the 1930s-1940s at Nishapur revealed that many areas of the city were indeed abandoned around this period and never reoccupied. Medieval chroniclers give staggering casualty figures. Ibn al-Athir estimated 700,000 deaths at one siege alone, while Juvini recorded 1,300,000 at another. Modern historians treat these numbers with caution. Cities of the time simply couldn't support such populations, and the figures are likely exaggerated by an order of magnitude. But even accounting for exaggeration, the destruction was catastrophic. The Mongol Khwarezmian War lasted less than 2 years, yet the region's total casualties are estimated between 2 and 15 million people, making it one of the bloodiest conflicts in human history. What we can say with certainty: mass executions occurred at multiple cities. Urban centers were systematically destroyed. Agricultural infrastructure was devastated. The region's cultural and economic landscape was transformed. Persian poet and mystic Adar of Nishapur, one of the most important figures in classical Persian literature, was killed during the sack of the city at around age 78. His death symbolized the annihilation not just of populations, but of cultural and intellectual heritage. Now we come to the difficult question: what actually happened to women during these conquests? The historical record is clear on certain facts. First, women were taken as spoils of war. This was common practice in medieval warfare across virtually all cultures. Contemporary sources confirm that after victories, artisans were sent to Mongolia, young women and children were distributed among soldiers, and others were executed or enslaved. Second, Genghis Khan and his male relatives had multiple wives and concubines. According to the Secret History and Persian Chronicles, this was part of Mongol elite culture. Bort remained his principal wife and held significant political influence, but Genghis Khan married at least 6 women and had numerous concubines. Third, his sons followed similar patterns. Historical accounts record that Jachai, his eldest son, had 40 sons himself, indicating a large number of wives and concubines. Fourth, political marriages were systematically arranged. Genghis Khan's daughters were married to important allies and subject peoples as part of diplomatic strategy, creating lasting alliances. However, we must be honest about what the historical record does not support. We have no evidence of elaborate bureaucratic systems for categorizing and processing captive women, with the industrial precision described in some modern retellings. No historical source describes tattooing, medical experimentation, or systematic record-keeping of individual women, beyond general references to captives being distributed as spoils. The detailed protocols and classification systems you often hear about are not found in any primary source, not in the Persian chronicles of Juvini or Rashid al-Din, not in the Chinese records, not in the secret history of the Mongols. What we have instead are general descriptions of brutal conquest practices that were unfortunately common across many medieval empires, not unique industrialized systems. That said, the pattern is clear. The Mongol elite, through a combination of conquest, political marriages, and systematic polygamy across generations, would have left a significant genetic footprint, if the genetic studies are correct about linking that DNA to them. The key phrase is "if correct," which brings us to the science. In 2003, a team of geneticists led by Tatiana Zergel published a groundbreaking study in the American Journal of Human Genetics titled The Genetic Legacy of the Mongols. They analyzed Y chromosomes from over 2,100 men across 16 populations throughout Asia. What they found was striking. A particular Y-chromosomal lineage appeared in approximately 8% of men in the regions stretching from the Pacific to the Caspian Sea. This lineage showed unusually low genetic diversity, suggesting it expanded rapidly from a single source. Based on mutation rates, they estimated it originated in Mongolia approximately 1,000 years ago, right around Genghis Khan's time. The distribution of this genetic signature closely matched the boundaries of the Mongol Empire at the time of Genghis Khan's death in 1227. In Mongolia itself, the frequency reached nearly 8%. Among the Hazaras of Pakistan, a people who claim descent from Genghis Khan and maintain oral genealogies supporting this, the signature was common. If this lineage did originate with Genghis Khan, the numbers were staggering. Approximately 16 million men alive in 2003, roughly 0.5% of the world's male population would be his direct patrilineal descendants. The researchers proposed this rapid spread resulted from social selection, the tendency of powerful males in patriarchal societies to have more children, combined with their descendants maintaining elite status across generations. But science is self-correcting, and in 2017, a Chinese research team published a challenge to this interpretation. The problem with the original study, they noted, was sample size and geographic scope. Zergel's team had tested about 2,100 men. The Chinese team analyzed over 18,000 individuals from a broader region of Central Asia. With this more refined picture, they found something unexpected. The genetic signature wasn't 1,000 years old. It was approximately 2,600 years old, dating back 1,600 years before Genghis Khan was even born. This suggested the lineage had already spread among Central Asian tribes long before the Mongol Empire. The region was, after all, the heart of the Silk Road, facilitating genetic mixing across vast distances for millennia. So where does this leave us? We know several things for certain. 1. The Y chromosome lineage is real. There is indeed an unusually common genetic signature across Central Asia. 2. It expanded rapidly. The low genetic diversity indicates rapid population growth from a restricted ancestral population. 3. It correlates with historical events. The geographic distribution does match areas of Turco-Mongol influence, even if predating Genghis Khan specifically. 4. Social selection happened. Whether 1,000 or 2,600 years ago, powerful males in patrilineal societies left disproportionate genetic legacies. But we cannot definitively prove it came from Genghis Khan himself without his DNA, and his burial site has never been found. According to tradition, his grave was deliberately hidden, with those who knew its location executed to preserve the secret. Other Super Y lineages. Interestingly, Genghis Khan's case isn't unique. Geneticists have identified several other Super Y lineages. A lineage linked to Jiakanga, grandfather of the Qing dynasty founder, present in 1.5 million men in northern China. The Yui Nail lineage in Ireland, associated with a dynasty of high kings. The Kari clan lineage in Kazakhstan. At least 9 other unidentified lineages across Asia. This suggests a consistent pattern. In patrilineal societies where political power translated to reproductive advantage across multiple generations, certain male lineages could rapidly expand. Whether or not the genetic link to Genghis Khan is proven, the broader impact of the Mongol Empire is undeniable. The conquests created the largest contiguous land empire in history, stretching from Korea to Hungary. The Mongol peace, The Pax Mongolica facilitated unprecedented trade and cultural exchange along the Silk Road. But this came at an enormous human cost. Entire cities were destroyed, populations were massacred, agricultural regions were devastated. The cultural and intellectual heritage of centuries was lost in weeks. Archaeological evidence continues to reveal the scope of destruction. Excavations across Central Asia show mass abandonment of urban centers around 1220–1221. Layers of destruction in multiple cities. Evidence of widespread burning and demolition. Disruption of trade networks and irrigation systems. Yet remarkably, some regions recovered. Within a generation, Samarkand and Bukhara began to revive. The Mongol rulers, particularly Genghis Khan's grandson Kublai Khan, became patrons of culture and learning. Let's be clear about what history actually shows. Well, the documented facts. Genghis Khan unified the Mongol tribes and built an empire that stretched across Asia. His campaigns resulted in mass casualties, measured in millions, even accounting for medieval exaggeration. Women were taken as war captives, a common but brutal practice in medieval warfare. The Mongol elite, across multiple generations, had numerous wives and concubines. His descendants ruled vast territories for centuries. An unusual Y-chromosomal signature is common across regions once controlled by Mongols. What remains uncertain? Whether the genetic signature truly originated with Genghis Khan or predates him. Precise casualty figures for individual campaigns. Detailed systems for managing captive populations beyond general references in sources. The exact location of Genghis Khan's remains, which would allow direct genetic testing. So is Genghis Khan the ancestor of 16 million men today? The honest answer is we don't know for certain. The genetic signature exists, but its origin remains debated. Without Genghis Khan's actual DNA, we cannot definitively prove the connection. But what we can say is this. The Mongol Empire, through its combination of conquest, systematic polygamy among the elite, and dynastic continuity across generations, created conditions that could absolutely produce such a genetic legacy. Whether the specific star cluster, Y-chromosome, came from Genghis Khan himself or from a broader ancestral population of Central Asian warriors, it represents the same phenomenon. Political power translating into reproductive advantage across centuries. The true story of Genghis Khan and his empire is complex enough without embellishment. He was born into poverty and hardship, forged by trauma and loss. He united fractious tribes through a combination of brilliant leadership, strategic alliances, and ruthless efficiency. He built an empire that reshaped the world. But that empire came at a terrible cost, measured in destroyed cities, devastated populations, and cultural losses we can still feel today. The genetic studies, whether they prove a direct link to Genghis Khan or not, reveal something profound about human history. In societies where political power concentrated in male lineages, where warfare and conquest were the paths to dominance, a small number of men could leave genetic legacies affecting millions. Modern genetic research has given us powerful tools to investigate the past. We can trace migration patterns, identify population bottlenecks, and detect the signatures of historical events written in our DNA. But science also has limits. Without Genghis Khan's remains, we cannot definitively prove the genetic connection. The Y-chromosome signature tells us something happened, rapid expansion of a male lineage across Central Asia. But the specific individual at its origin remains elusive. Perhaps that's fitting. Genghis Khan ordered his burial site hidden, his final resting place unknown even to his own people. 800 years later, he remains partly legend, partly mystery, and partly measurable fact written in the genetics of millions. As we conclude, let's remember that behind every statistic, every genetic marker, every chronicler's casualty figure, every archaeological site were real human lives. Women who lost their families, children who never knew their parents, cities that took centuries to rebuild, cultures that vanished forever. The Mongol Empire's legacy lives on not just in genetics, but in the very geography of Eurasia, in the mixing of peoples and cultures, in the trauma passed down through generations. History is written not only by victors, but in the bones uncovered by archaeologists, in the DNA carried by millions, and in the collective memory of peoples who survived catastrophe. The question isn't just, are 16 million men descended from Genghis Khan? The real question is, what does human history teach us about power, conquest, and legacy? And the answer, written in both chronicles and chromosomes, is complex, troubling, and endlessly fascinating.